What's up, Pat Biondi here with the Elevate Movement podcast powered by the National Sports Association. Today I'm talking with Nick Longhi, a former 30th round pick of the Boston Red Sox. He's played 8 pro seasons, most of them with the Red Sox, a couple with the Reds, and most recently the Rockies. Played against Nick a lot coming up through the minor leagues. Awesome dude, great competitor, and excited for you guys to get to listen to him talk about his journey and some of the things that he's learned both mentally and mechanically in his baseball journey from high school through pro ball. So hope you guys enjoy it. Here we go. What's going on, brother? How's your off season going?
Nothing more. Same old, same old. Just working out, getting back in shape, getting ready,
Yeah, so
ready
what
for another opportunity.
you sent me a video of you in the ice bath the other day. How long have you been doing that for? What is it just something you kind of started? Is it deeper? Were you watching Wim Hof, getting into any of that stuff or what?
No, not so much. I mean, originally it just started as like a recovery purpose. Usually I do a lot of contrast, hot and cold, but I've kind of just been hunkering down in the ice tub, seeing how long I can get it there for, just to, you know, wind down. Maybe like I'll do it like twice a week, see if I can stay in there for half hour, 45 minutes at a time. Because as well as being beneficial for your body, and it's obviously like ice in your entire body, it's a big mental thing to kind of push yourself to stay in there as long as you can because it's not comfortable.
So when you're doing it mentally for you, are you trying to relax into it? Is it like a test of will every time where you're fighting it? What is it like for you mentally to do that?
Yeah, no, it's definitely more of a test of will because it's very uncomfortable for me. I'm the type of person where I would much rather be sweating all day every day. I'm not a huge fan of the cold. I would rather play baseball in 120 degrees with humidity than play it in 45-degree weather.
I agree with you on that 100%.
Like
And
when we
I'm
played
from up north. And
what
I
was
don't
it,
like playing.
Binghamton? When I was in Portland and you were in Binghamton,
Yeah.
that was that April in Portland and going
Ooh.
to Binghamton when it's 28 degrees was the most miserable time of my life.
Portland's tough too because it's right by the water, so it's windy there a lot. Like it's always
It's,
colder there.
and the first month we were there, it was never cold enough to snow. There was just snow piled up on every corner. It was literally like 34, 35 degrees every day and rained. So it wasn't cold enough to make snow, but it was just cold enough and raining to get you soaked, and then you're freezing while you're soaked.
Yeah, we had a game just like that. It was a little warmer. It was closer, probably like 45 to 50, something like that. Um, but yeah, that place was deceiving too, because like even going into the summer, you would get those days where it was like 55, 60 during the day, but by the time it got to night, it would get into the 40s. And if it's windy or something like that, or those days where it's like drizzling, like you're talking about, yeah, those can be miserable.
The thing that was really nice about Binghamton was those giant diesel heaters in the dugout, though.
The heaters save you, man. You got to get the hands warm before at bats.
And I got a little bit of the Southern complex, man. Like diesel fuel for some reason, I really like the
Just get you
smell of.
going.
So, yeah, I was kind of like, man, I was like, this is really nice.
That's
I'm gonna
funny.
sit by the heater and smell some diesel.
Hey, so let's for everybody listening, let's kind of introduce you, where you're from, and let people get a feel for you. So you were born in Massachusetts. How long did you live there for? Because I know you were a big Red Sox fan growing up, but you're in Florida now. So when did you make that move?
We left the state of Massachusetts when I was less than a year old, and we moved to Palm Beach Gardens. But my dad lived his entire adult life there, so Boston, everything was, pretty just how I was brought up. So that's what I fell in love with. And as a kid, you take the interest of your father because that's who I spent a large amount of time with, bonding through sports and stuff like that. And yeah, it was almost like a gift when I would get to stay up late and watch Red Sox games and you know Patriots games, Celtics games, whatever it was. So I wasn't up there long enough to become a fan, but I took an interest in it because of my father.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that. So for you growing up, was baseball always the first love, or was it another sport that kind of captured you at a younger age?
Yeah, it's just what I did. It's one of the things I took a big interest in when I was real little. You know what I mean? And I being the son of two golf professionals, I obviously had the little plastic kids golf clubs and all that stuff. But what I routinely kept picking up was, the baseball bat and the little glove that I got. Uh, that's just
So
that's
from the
that's what I took a big interest in.
so from the time that you can remember, baseball is what you wanted to do.
Yeah, and I mean solely played it through high school and
Okay, so yeah, let's talk about your training then growing up. So at what point did you kind of make that decision where it was like, okay, this is definitely what I want to do, where it was sole focus on baseball?
I mean, I dabbled in other sports. I played on the middle school golf team and stuff like that. But honestly, from the time I was 8 or 9 years old, I knew that being a professional baseball player was what I wanted to do. And remember sitting here on TV and dad's watching the Little League World Series. I'm getting to that age of 9. And he's like, wow, that'd be really cool to play in Williamsport one day. And, I'm 9 years old. And I said, the hell with that World Series. I want to play in the real World Series. I don't care about the Little League World Series. I want to play in the real World Series.
There it is.
So, even from what I can remember, I've wanted to be a big leaguer.
I got you.
I've wanted to play professional.
So, what was your trajectory like? Looking back, can you talk a little bit about when you started to feel like that was a possibility? I'm assuming you kind of always felt like that was a possibility, but at what point in high school did you start getting recruited to colleges, start talking to pro scouts, and can you just kind of lay that time in your life out of what it was like for you?
It really. So I committed to LSU at 15 years old. Um, but as far as getting drafted out of high school professionally, it really became apparent that could happen while I was 15 years old. We were playing Palmetto High School, and they were looking at there was a ton of colleges and pretty much a scout from every single major league team looking at Grandin Getzman, who was a first round pick for the Rays, and I can't remember if it was 10 or 11.
Okay.
They were all there watching him, and I was hitting cleanup for my high school team. And that night I went 2 for 3 with 2 homers and a walk, played right field, had a couple assists, and came in and pitched a couple innings and hit 90 miles an hour. And a handful of scouts came over and asked my coaches about me. And my coaches were like, well, this kid's 15 years old. Like, y'all got a couple years before you can really pay attention to him. And at that point, I was already committed to LSU. But my coaches coming over and telling me that post game was kind of like the realization, like, wow, like, I could get drafted. I could get drafted out of high school in a couple years if they're already looking at me.
Yeah. So for you, then leading up to the draft, when you eventually got drafted by the Red Sox, what was that experience like? What was your expectation going into it, and like how did that whole process unfold for you?
Draft day was actually not even draft day because the whole process was really stressful and really hard because I slipped pretty far in the draft. A lot of teams thought I was going to go to LSU. They didn't see me breaking that commitment, but any pre-draft workout I did, I had, I don't know, I had almost a dozen in-home visits where scouts would come to the house and do eye tests and personality tests. Had drug testers from MLB come and drug test me when I was going into my senior year. So I was on the top board to get drafted, and any team that was looking at me was saying, hey, like, we see you going anywhere in the top 3 rounds. I wound up slipping to the 30th round. So it was a very it was pretty stressful and pretty frustrating because as a 17-year-old, you don't really understand everything that's going on. And you're just like, oh, well, the scout from this team told me this round, and the scout from this team told me this round, and the scout from this team told me this round. And, you kind of hype yourself up and mentally you're like, okay, like that's where I'm going to go. And then when it doesn't happen, it's a letdown.
Yeah, I've had similar experiences, different, so not necessarily thinking about going that high, but like top 10 round type of a thing, and then the day comes and you're not getting the calls or people aren't saying what you want to hear, and all of a sudden, like I went undrafted as a junior, because once it got past a certain round, I kind of decided I was going to go back to school. And so I can definitely relate to that, where it should be a really fun day, but you have all those different expectations, all the things that you're trying to figure out, basically, and it can kind of amp up the stress and everything. So,
Well, yeah, because of everything that was going on, a local news network, because I played in Venice, they wanted to come and they wanted a video doing the draft, and boy, am I glad I said no to that. Like that was one of the better decisions I think I've ever made.
that's
But
funny. So, okay, so you get drafted in the 30th round. What was that decision like for you? Was it something I'm sure you thought about pretty hard of, do I want to go to LSU or do I want to start my pro career? So what ultimately led you to decide to start pro ball?
well, the thing that made the decision for me was that it was uh, at the time my favorite team. You know what I mean? It was, hey, I'm either going to the college I wanted to go to. I don't know, since I was 10 when I started watching college football. And I remember because it was LSU versus Florida, and all my friends were rooting for Florida. And I was like, all right, well, forget you guys. I'm going to root for LSU. I just want to,
So it just became your
be like,
squad.
yeah. Yeah. And then that's who I just wound up following all the way through. And it was either I go to my favorite college or I go to my favorite professional team. But at the end of the day, you look at um, the possibilities of getting hurt, and that the money is right there within grasp, playing for your favorite professional team, and that's the decision I made. And honestly, it's a decision as you get older, you still start to think about and, push. This is my eighth season in the minor leagues. And you're like, man, I wonder if it would have been different if I did go to college or where I would have came out of there. So there's a lot of different things to think about.
What would your
But
advice
honestly,
be?
if it was any other team but the Red Sox, I wouldn't have signed in the 30th round.
So what would your advice be to a high school guy that might find himself in that situation? I guess maybe what was your experience like as a young 18, 19-year-old in pro ball? And you were just kind of alluding to it, to the idea of what would it have been like if I went to LSU? So what do you think you maybe could have gained from going to college, or what do you think some of the possible advantages of going to pro ball early are?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's definite advantages to both, and it really depends on what's most important to you. And the first thing's an education. And I mean, I hate to sound like this guy, but I never really valued education. I wasn't a huge fan of school. Like I said, I'd much rather be outside working, sweating, than uh, working a desk job. Like that's just my personality. Like I have a hard time sitting still. Like I like to be moving. Um, but advice for kids: if you are going to go to college and you are going to play every single day and get the opportunity to start for 4 years, I think that's a big, decision in that, because if you go play pro ball as a 17, 18-year-old and you get drafted, you're going to get a couple years where it's at bats, and you're going to play every day. So it really boils down to, are you in the round you want to go in? Did you get the money you got? How valuable is an education to you? And while I'm in college, am I going to get the opportunity to play every day? Or am I going to be a guy that's a, red shirt freshman and sophomore, and I really don't get to play till my junior year? Because at that point, you've wasted 2 years of baseball.
Let me add another layer to that. You've been with a handful of organizations now. How much do you think that plays a role in it? Because, from talking to other friends that have been with a number of organizations, I feel like there's a difference between going place A and place B as far as how you're going to get developed in that organization. I think that's one of the layers that's difficult to understand as you're going through the process. Like, only once you're in it can you understand the complexities of developing as a player. So do you think that's something that guys should think about too, is what is this organization's track record like for developing guys? Or do you think that at that point, pro ball is pro ball?
I mean, again, a lot of it depends on the money because, if you got a team offering you, $1 million, you know that they're taking an interest in you and they're going to give you every opportunity.
Yep.
Um, on the other hand, if you're not looking at as much money, and because God, there's guys that sign for $80,000, $100,000 that play 5 years in the minor leagues and they never have a season with more than 200 at bats. They're almost backup players, even though you get drafted from the get go. Which
I played with a couple
it's
guys.
It's hard to establish yourself that way as a minor leaguer and to get yourself more playing time.
Dude, I'm thinking of one guy in particular, Dale Burdick. You played against him that year in Double-A. Maybe. I don't know if he was there when we played you guys, but either way, he kind of found himself in that role where he was going, I believe, to Mississippi State. He was committed, decided to sign. I have no idea what he signed for, but I think it was a little bit later. And solid baseball player. It felt like he never got a chance to play a full season. So he was that guy that they would send up to Double-A or Triple-A when somebody got hurt for a week or whatever the time frame was. And it felt like, he just like got put in that role and almost never had the opportunity to develop as a player. Like, it wasn't even a thought or a possibility. It was just like, oh, he's our guy we'll send if we need somebody. And that's tough.
And man. I mean, it's really tough. A bench player in baseball is probably the hardest thing you can possibly do in sports. You get 4 at-bats a week, and they're usually off of a back-end guy throwing 99 miles an hour with heavy sink and a wipeout slider. Like, what are my odds that I go in there and hit 300? Not good.
Right.
But getting back to your point before, I'm sorry, it was about
we were just talking about different organizations and
yeah, I mean, you have to look at, even in free agency, draft free agency. Is this an organization where I'm going to be blocked at my position? Or is this an organization that has opportunity for me if I perform? And it all boils down to performance. If you go out there, do your job, play hard, put up numbers, you should get an opportunity to play.
Yeah, the thing is, like, putting up numbers means, like, numbers. I think that's where, as a player, you can kind of trick yourself sometimes. It's like, I did well. Like, I know I can do well. But you got to put, especially if you're not a first couple round guy, you got to go out and dominate wherever you're at. You know what I mean?
And I mean, even the 2019 I had in AAA, I was 23 years old in AAA, and I spent half of my 22-year-old season in AAA. Didn't play very much, was the backup guy. And then I go to a jam-packed Cincinnati Reds AAA outfield between prospects, and then a couple guys that had career years. A great buddy of mine, Brian O'Grady, hits 28 homers. Aquino hits 28 homers and hits 300. Both guys are up around 300, and we all play the same position.
Yep.
So
and you had a good year. What did you hit that year? 280 with 12?
283 with 12, and I hit 10 the first half. And that's even what I was saying. So I went there, and I was not an everyday player. And then Aquino dove for a ball and hurt his shoulder and was out for 2 months. And the first month Aquino was gone, I hit 380 with 5 homers.
Okay.
So then for the rest of that first half of the season, they're like, okay, like, we got to play him. He did good. And the first half of the year, I hit 300 with 10 home runs, and 23 years old, hitting 4-hole in AAA, 3, 4, 5-hole pretty much everywhere. And the second half of the season, they brought guys up that were prospects that they really liked, and then my at-bats got cut in half. I had 120 at-bats the second half of the season.
Dude, that's one of the toughest parts. One of my other buddies that's kind of been a journeyman and played in a bunch of organizations, been up and down. it's the same thing, man. Getting that opportunity to get at bats every day, whether it's in AA, AAA, or in the big leagues, is one of the most difficult parts of it, you know?
And it's so different because I feel like I've been on both sides of the fence now,
Mm.
where
As the
from a young
prospect
age,
in.
yeah, even though I signed in the 30th round, I was always I was a top 10 guy for Boston. I was a top 10 guy in their minor league system, and then traded, injuries, having Tommy John surgery, to where I played every single day all the way through up to AA. If I was healthy, I had 400 plus at bats every year. And then once you get to AAA, it's a lot more of you got to work your way in here, which if you're a first rounder, you're still going to get your everyday at bats. But as kind of one of those like fringe prospect guys where they're like, hey, like he could be good, he might not make the big leagues, he could make the big leagues. You really got to play your way into a starting role. There's no more of you show up to the ballpark and expect to play that day. It's shoot, man, I went 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts last night. I can pretty much chalk up that I'm on the bench today.
Yeah,
And that's how the game is at the higher level. It's who's performing. You have to perform to play.
I think that's one of the biggest challenges too as a player. You hear this when guys go up and down too. A lot of pitchers that are relievers or something. Just playing with freedom is one of the most difficult things to do in that situation, where you understand that if I don't do well right now, like I'm either not playing, going back down, whatever the case may be. And so being able to free yourself from attaching to those realities or those thoughts and just go out and do your thing with conviction is one of the most difficult skills to produce, but most important ones. You know what I
Oh
mean?
yeah, and I mean I can't tell you from 2018 because I was the same role in AAA. 2019, I can't tell you how many times I've been out in left field and I'm sitting there and I'm 0 for 2 and I'm like, oh shit, I better get a hit. Otherwise, I'm not playing tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like I got 2 at bats left to get a knock. Otherwise, I'm definitely out.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, there's an amount of pressure you apply as an athlete to get something done. But you see the guys that really succeed are the ones that just are able to go out there and they're like, hey man, I'm going to go out here. I'm going to give it my all. And if I play tomorrow, I play tomorrow. If I don't, I don't. Kind of I'm going to go out and let the chips fall where they may.
Yes.
Those are the guys who really have a lot of success. The guys that apply pressure while still being very talented athletes, you can kind of see the frustration and
The tension.
other things. And it's almost impossible to play baseball angry.
You have to. That was one of the biggest challenges for me. Is I think you can. Some of my best games I felt like were angry, but it's got to be a channeled aggression. You know what I mean? Yeah, and I think finding that balance is one of the really difficult things to do. Right? Of being relaxed and tension free, but being assertive and aggressive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So for you, you always struck me as someone that was pretty hard on yourself. Has that changed? Has that changed as you've gotten older, gone through pro ball and played this long? Like what has shifted for you as far as letting go of some of those things we were talking about, like not worrying about I need a hit in this last at bat or two?
Oh, I mean, like you said, like I also always feel like I've been a guy that's always played with a little bit of a chip, always somewhat angry because of the fact that I work so hard and I put so much effort into it. I mean, shoot, man, if you ask me, like, of course, I'm going to tell you, I think I should hit every ball 115 miles an hour off the bat. But it really goes in phases, honestly. So when I was young, when I was 17, 18, 19, it was me being mad about, you know, the 30th round of the draft and that label of being a 30th rounder. And I was upset because in my mind, and of course, potentially everybody thinks they're better than they are. And maybe that was my reality. Maybe I thought I was a lot better than I was. And, of course I thought I should have gone in the top few rounds. But those first few years was just being angry about the draft and pressing because I'm like, I want to show everybody that I'm not really a 30th rounder. I want to show you guys that I'm a top talent, that I can do this.
Do you feel like
And
that benefited you too, though? Because you said you used the word pressing right there. Do you feel like there were ways that kind of drove and motivated you as well?
oh, absolutely. There's ways that it motivates you, but there's also ways it's destructive. And in the destructive sense, it's, an 0 for 4, and I feel like my family doesn't want to talk to me. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh man, I went 0 for 4 with 3 punchies. Like, my parents don't love me anymore. That's the aspect of where it's damaging, is that it affects your life outside of baseball. Because at the end of the day, we're all more than athletes. We have a life outside of the field. And when you're caught up in that anger and this pressing, all we see is our worth on the baseball field, instead of, what do I do outside the field? What's my worth with my family? I have a family that loves me. I do anything for them. I have friends that I'll do anything for, that would do anything for me. You know what I mean? We are more than what we do on the field, as hard as it is to drop that at the field sometimes.
Yeah, it is interesting because inevitably, especially when you really care about what you do, you feel deeply like what happened on the field, right? So even if
Oh, it hurts,
even if
man.
mentally like you're not thinking about it, you're still kind of carrying that energy with you, and
Oh, yeah.
that can be
You
difficult.
struggle, it hurts. It hurts. And then the damaging part is where, I don't want to say hurt, because you don't do anything maliciously to affect other people, but inadvertently, you affect other people. There's times where I've gone through a slump and struggled, and I don't call my family for a month and a half.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
we just get
I don't
caught up
talk
in
to
our
my mom or dad for a month and a half because I'm almost embarrassed,
yeah
and I
yeah
think they're embarrassed.
we just get caught up in our bullshit, right? Like
Yeah, it's
you just
human
get
nature, man.
caught up in the emotion of it.
And getting back to that kind of anger and being destructive and helpful, and it going through phases. Then you look at the next couple of years, and well, I still put pressure on myself. It wasn't as much about the draft. It was, all right, I'm going to show that I'm a big leaguer. And then 2018 was incredibly frustrated. And then 2019 was probably the most carefree year I think I've ever had. Even talking to Blake Trahan, Louisiana kid. And I mean, he was kind of a big proponent. We'd have long talks. He's like, hey, man, he's like, let me ask you something. He's like, if you go 0 for 4 tonight, is there going to be somebody waiting after the game with a rifle to kill you? And I was like, no. And he goes, exactly, man. He's like, this shit doesn't matter. This is a game that we love, but it's not life. There's always more to it. And I kind of, into 2019, I don't want to say saw the end of my career at 23 in AAA, but I was like, okay, like I'm going to be a bounce around guy. I'm going to not get everyday at bats. And I kind of just had this like fuck it mentality of like, hey, like whatever happens, happens. And it was the most carefree I've played baseball. And, you see the results, which at the end of the day, I'm sitting back here and I'm like, man, like, wonder what I could have done if I had played my entire career with this mentality.
Mm.
But it's part of evolving and growing as a human being, is learning the more experience you get.
100%, man. I had that same type of feeling number of times in my career where it was always like a year late. You know what I mean? Like, oh, what would have happened if I did that my first year in low A? Or you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
you're right, though. I think for me, I'm done playing now. For me, a lot of it is just understanding the different thought processes that I have and the different emotional patterns that I have and what causes them. And then you start to be able to grow that same way you're talking on a baseball sense. You're growing individually of how you react to stressful situations, how you are able to redirect your focus and your energy the way you want to. You know what I mean? Because I think with all the mental health awareness stuff, I thought that was a great thing at first when it started becoming a thing. But then at times it feels like a cop out, or like a, hey, here's my reason why I am not who I want to be. And like, that's the excuse. So yeah, for me, it was always like, okay, identify what's going on, be honest about it, and then figure out how to improve it.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And I mean, even this year, man, being injured again, and 2019 had my best year in the minors in AAA, and then go to 2020. I'm back with the Red Sox. I'm super. I mean, again, with this attitude of I'm excited to go play baseball. I'm excited to show up to the field every day. As to where there's days when you're struggling and you're like, here we go again, man. I gotta go play again today.
It's 1:00 already.
Yeah, I'm 0 for 25. I can't wait to show up today. But there was just this, and it was the same thing in 19, where even if I had a bad game the night before, it was like, okay, I can't wait to go to the field today because I'm gonna do something positive. And I was feeling like that in 20, and then COVID hit, and I was one of the COVID casualties in the minor league world that didn't have a season. At 24 years old, I thought my career was over. I was like, man, like who knows when this is going to end? This is dragging out for a really long time, and I understand that there's more important stuff to baseball, and but at the same time, you're like, this is my life. Like I want to get back to my career. I want to get back to playing. And then 2.5, 3 weeks before spring training, the Rockies called me, and as ready as I was and as excited as I was to go play baseball, mentally and physically, I was a little out of shape. Just wasn't prepared. After a little over a year off of baseball, you forget the failure aspect and how much failure there actually is in the game. And you get in your head, at least I did, all the success I had in 2019, and that's all I'm playing in my head, not thinking about the negatives. So I walk out on the field after a year of no at bats, and I'm like, yeah, dude, I should be able to hit 300.
Dude,
when in reality,
okay, so let's talk about that a little bit because, you didn't play with Ryan Lamar, did you?
I did a little bit.
Okay, so he and I talk the mental game, the mental side of things a lot, and after I got done playing, especially when I would talk to him, one of the things I noticed is going into spring training, we always have all these ideas. We've been working on stuff in our swing over the off season, and it's like, oh, I can't wait. And then you get down there, and a lot of times what happens is you get into game situations, and exactly what you talked about, it just kind of hits you. It like overwhelms you in a way where you can lose focus of what you were doing or lose confidence in what you were doing. And it's all like automatically, okay, I got to trim down whatever I was doing with my load or whatever it is. You know what I mean? So
and you hit the panic button and you abandon everything you worked on for 4 months while you were off.
What do you think that is? And how do you think the best way to deal with that pressure, that anxiety, whatever you want to call it, because it's real, like that getting in the at bats with somebody that's throwing 100, and then all of a sudden you're 0 for 7, and the season's starting, and it's like, shoot, I wanted to get off to this start. I'm like, all those things happen, right? And we've both probably been there where you feel that stress and that anxiety, and like you're pressing every at bat. So what do you think the best way to handle that situation is?
I think that is a result of being result based, of saying, hey, like, if I don't get hits, this isn't working. When ultimately it's your work that you've put in is guiding you towards a better purpose, a greater purpose. So even spring training in 2019, before my best year, I had just gone out and worked with a buddy of mine, DJ Peterson, because I played with him a little bit in AAA, and he's the guy that I watched, and I was like, wow, like, I think he was 26 or 27 at the time. I think 26. But I watched him, and I was like, wow, like the way he works, he's such a professional, his at-bats, everything he does. Some of the pitches I saw him hit, I've never seen anybody hit out of the ballpark. And I look at that guy, and I'm like, wow, like, in a few years, like, that's where I want to be. Like, I want to carry myself with that professionalism. I want to stick to my approach like that. I want to do what this guy does. And he kind of took me under his wing, and they had the track man, and there's a few balls that I hit. Only had 90 at bats, but a couple balls I hit 107, 109. And he came up to me and said, "Hey man, if we change your path, you could be a pretty good hitter. If we flatten you out just a little bit more," he said, you could bang." So that's what I went out there and worked with him on, and worked on flattening out. And I remember coming into spring training in 19. And again, I thought immediately from the first at bat, I was like, I'm probably going to lead Arizona in backfield homers. You know what I mean? I was like, I'm going to hit a homer every single game I play. I feel so good. And I remember, playing the Dodgers and all these other teams coming to the Reds complex and playing us. And until our last 3 days in town, all I worked on was getting a ball airborne. Like I was like, I want to hit fly balls, because they lead to home runs. And all of spring training, I probably hit .08. Like, because everything I was doing, I was just clipping, ground ball. And I remember, again, after the first 2 games, I was like panicking. I'm like, dude, I've had 8 at bats and I've hit eight ground balls. like I'm trying to lift the ball. Like, what's happening? And DJ is a big proponent of, hey man, calm down. Stop pressing the panic button. Keep doing the same thing. When you get in a rhythm, it's going to work. And those weeks in spring training, I was focusing so hard on just trying to do the same thing, waiting for it to click. And I remember a couple days before we left, I got a piece of a couple and hit a couple pretty good to center field in the air, off the wall, left center. And I was like, okay, here we go. And then I go to Louisville that year. And the first month, kind of the same thing, missing some pitches, clipping them, hitting ground balls, not doing what I want to do. And then Aquino got hurt, was given the opportunity to play every day. And after that amount of time, it just clicked. Everything started working. Barrels in the zone, started really squaring stuff up. But that was the hardest I've ever had to like pay attention to, like, hey, like, don't abandon it. Like, don't give up on it. Like, keep doing the same thing. Even though there's not success right now, my spring training stats aren't on the back of my baseball card. So, who cares? And that's like this thing that you trick yourself into, because as you get to the higher levels, you're like, man, there's somebody always watching my at-bat. There's somebody always paying attention to it. I have to do something this at-bat. I have to hit a homer in this at-bat.
That's the tough part about it, because you're right. And that's a reality too, though. When you get to that level, spring training, you are competing for a job. You're competing for at-bats. When you're AAA big league guy, you know what I mean? It's not like you said earlier, when you get to AAA, maybe if you're a first rounder, you have guaranteed at-bats. But outside of that, like, it's getting to the point where we're just trying to figure out who the best fit to go up is. So, yeah. I mean, it is tough to stick with something and work on it like it's practice when you know that other reality is true too.
Yeah, and that's the other, when I'm talking about spring training doing that, it's even harder to keep that mentality in the season when everything does count.
Yeah.
And, you're working with the hitting coach, and they're trying to help you and get you out of it. And they're talking about, don't focus on results. And I'm like, dude, like, how can I not? Like, if I go 0 for 4, like, that hurts me. If I go 0 for 4 out here trying to do this, that hurts me. Like, I need to find a knock. And then my last couple at bats, I'll do it just to keep my head above water.
So this just made me think, in the most recent year, in the 2021 season, you were with Colorado kind of in that backup role again. So what did you experience going through it now as an older player? Do you feel like you handled it well? Were there things that changed throughout the course of the season?
Yeah, there's absolutely things that changed. And I mean, I had a decent spring training and alt site. And the last week at the alt site, I swung and partially retore the ligament in my elbow, the reconstructed Tommy John ligament. And I played the whole season and tried to grind through it. But, the first few weeks I came out, or the first week in Albuquerque, I came out hot coming off the DL. I had half my season's home runs in my first 30 at-bats. And again, I'm sitting up there and I'm like, man, like, this is going great. Like, if I keep doing this, like, and it was to the point where, again, wasn't planning on being an everyday player. But I think I was, with the at-bats I was putting together and everything I was doing, I was really working towards being an everyday player. If I had kept that up for a little bit longer, I think it would have been a, hey, you know,
We have to put the guy in the lineup type of thing.
we gotta put you in there. We got to run you out there every day. Um, and got hurt and came back from that injury and just couldn't quite put the swing back together. Wasn't feeling comfortable. And I had to change my approach because with the elbow, I was scared to swing over a breaking ball. And if you hear good hitters talk, it's, hey man, look stupid out front. Look stupid. Mike Trout looks stupid swinging over sliders sometimes in the dirt because he's hunting fastball out in front of the plate. He's trying to do damage. And when you feel like you're trying to back a fastball up and just fillet it to right field, and then you're hanging breaking balls, a pitch you can kind of pull, you put yourself in a hole because now you start missing good pitches to hit. You know, what's the easiest pitch? What do they tell you, man? Hunt the flat one. Look for the straight one. That's as simple a hitting approach as you can get, is look for the heater and do damage on it. And when you start missing middle heaters and all of a sudden you're 0-2 in 2 pitches, that is a hitter. That's not a recipe for success, you know?
Yeah, so you're bringing up approach right now, and it sounds like your approach is looking for a fastball out over the plate, looking to drive it in the big part of the field.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm going well and I do what I want to do, I'm trying to hit home runs to dead center field.
And so let's get a little bit more in depth, because working with a lot of young kids now, I try to talk a lot about how important that approach is and how important knowing exactly what you are trying to do when you go up there is. How has that either changed, stayed the same throughout your career, or maybe become more refined? So, like, I know talking to Lamar this year, like, a lot of what he was focused on was just strike zone discipline, like being aggressive on the right pitches and taking the right pitches. And how have you do you feel like you've evolved in that? Are you more aware of that going into games, like as part of your process and what you're focused on versus maybe first year or two?
Well, yeah, especially when you want to start hitting for power. Um, at the younger levels, I was always a very good hitter, and I believed in my hands, and I could use the other field very well. So for me, it was, hey, man, if this guy's going to throw me a fastball on the black or a couple inches off the plate, and I can get barrel to it and smack that thing hard to right field, I'm going to swing at it. But now you start to look at the discipline aspect, and you talk about, especially as a corner outfielder, you're talking about teams saying, hey, we don't care if you hit 300 or 280 or even 250. If you hit 230, but you hit 25 or 30 homers, you're looking to be a big leaguer. So now you need to identify more at the plate. I want to swing at pitches that I can do damage with. And by damage, I don't mean hitting a 108-mile-an-hour single to right field. I mean, this needs to catch a piece of the plate and I can hit it over the wall. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to hit a hard single. I'm trying to lift and I'm trying to elevate and hit it over the wall. And even from the numbers this year, the Rockies are they're getting into analytics. Well, every team's into analytics, but it's the first time I've ever seen it in my career. In-zone swing percentage, in-zone fastball swing percentage, in-zone fastball foul percentage, how many times you foul off the pitch. So not only how good are your decisions when you're making those decisions, are you hitting those decisions or are you missing those decisions? And you look at the numbers and everything, and this was, as far as swing decisions and discipline and pitches I was swinging at, it was my best year. Highest walk percentage I've ever had. And my swing decisions on breaking balls out of the zone, fastballs out of the zone, everything was on par or above what they want to see. So ultimately that will lead to success when you have the right approach. Now, while I was making good decisions at the pitches I want to swing at, the fastballs I want to hit, because again, I swung a lot of the time when I saw a fastball in zone, but my fastball foul percentage was ridiculously high because of the elbow. I'm sitting in between pitches. I can't get to a 94, 95 mile an hour fastball. Can't catch up to it because I'm sitting in between. As to where you're saying, hey, like, I'm going to get this heater. I'm going to party out in front, and I'm going to hit this to straightaway center field. Now you're talking about less two-strike appearances because you're ending at bats in the first couple pitches. While you get pitches to drive, I don't mean end at bats and, ass out a changeup to shortstop. I mean doing damage while you end at bats early. And that writes the tale of a different season, because now pitchers get that vibe too. They get all the numbers as well, just like hitters do. They get the numbers of, hey man, if I throw this guy a fastball in the zone in the first couple pitches, he's tagging it. I can't miss there. Now I got to nibble and I got to pick more. Well, now you're going to, as a hitter, you find yourself in more advantage counts. Yeah. You find yourself in counts of a 2-0, 2-1, 3-1. Shoot, if you're going good, green light, 3-0. If you're feeling it, you know what I mean? You start getting in these advantage counts, which makes it easier to hit because you have less pressure. You're not worried about the guy behind the plate. If he makes a mistake, you're out. You're not worried about getting rung up. You're like, all right, even if he makes a mistake, I still got 2 more to play with.
Yeah, 100%. Do you get have you gotten your elbow taken care of this offseason?
Yeah, I got a PRP injection the day that the season ended. Been resting it for 5 weeks, and right now it's feeling really good. In season, there was days I would just wake up and I would just I'd be like, I'm hurting today. I'm sore today.
Yeah, that's the other part people don't understand about the baseball season is so much of it is body not feeling good a lot of the time, but you still have to do whatever you do at the highest level. You know?
Oh man, I mean, you can, once you play professionally, your first day, the day that you report to play, and you play in your first professional game, that's the last day your body feels 100%. And that was July of 2013 was the last time my body's ever felt 100%. You know what I mean? There's always some little type of soreness, nagging injury. Hey, I hit the base funny. My ankle's bugging me today. Getting pelted, you know what I mean? Going out and playing with a giant bruise on your thigh, and every time you run and hit the ground, you're like that's uncomfortable.
Yeah, just a little
fouling it off your shin, off your ankle, off your foot. There's always something.
Yep, 100%, man.
And you can see the guys. You can see the guys that make it and have a lot of success are honestly the guys that stay the healthiest the most. Once you get to AAA, once you get to the high level, it's who is healthy all the time. So that's who usually winds up having a ton of success.
While we're on the health side, what's your in-season, off-season workout look like? Are you mostly lifting? Do you do any type of yoga or any other training like that? What's your diet look like? Run me through a couple of those things.
Well, in season this year was very weird with the elbow. Really toned down the workouts because at the end of the day, it's staying on the field. What keeps me on the field? And if I go in the weight room and I do something stupid and hurt myself in the weight room and then I can't play, number one, it's a bad look.
Are you normally a lift heavy guy in the season?
I don't want to say lift heavy, but I'm a big fan of continually moving and continually doing something, even if lifting every other day, separating upper, lower, like, hey, like, let me go in there, do this. Let me go in there, do that. Hey, I'm having a day where my body's not responding. I'm pretty sore. Let me get in there and really do a lot of stretching. Let me get in the cold tub. Let me do the work I need to do to get ready for that night. But generally, if everything is going good, I typically like to lift every other day.
What about in the off season?
Every other day, or sometimes 2 in a row, off day, 2 in a row, off day.
What about in the off season? What do your workouts look like?
Right now, it's a little bit more intense because I'm trying to get back in shape. Trying to get back down to about 215, 220, and I'm hovering. During the season, I was hovering 238.
What were you in Portland?
Portland to start the year. When I went into that spring training, I was 210, and in Portland, I was like 218, 220.
Okay.
Louisville, 19, 218 to 225. I hovered that through the season, was kind of up and down. So I feel like that's my comfortable playing weight where I'm strong, but I also feel that my body has the durability to play every day. Because when you get heavy, you don't have the same. Your body doesn't recover the same. It's not used to carrying those extra 20 pounds for 140 days in a row. When you're out there lifting, hitting BP, doing infield work, doing outfield work, playing games, 4 a.m. flights to go play a game that night, your body just doesn't recover the same. So I feel like 215 is my ideal weight. So right now I'm doing two-a-days.
I like it.
I got a home gym that I just built this off season. So as soon as I wake up, I have my coffee. I take a cold shower to wake up. I get in the gym and probably about 45 minutes of work, kind of like a little circuit with a salt bike mixed in. And then the afternoons are pretty free, man. Whether I run around and go fishing, whether I head down to the beach, go play golf or something like that. And then typically about 7:30 in the evening, I do the same workout I did in the morning, just 5 more rounds of it, another 40 minutes, and then I'll either have the cold tub set up or I'll have the hot tub out back, and I'll hop in one of those to try to recover and get ready for the next day.
Body feeling good right now?
Typically 5 days a week.
Okay. Two things. How's the body feeling? How's the golf swing feeling?
Body's feeling really good actually right now. Getting back in shape, being more active, kind of just enhances the mood. Really feel good. And played yesterday and shot 74. Now, not a tour course. Really, it's a really in shape course. Jacaranda West. It's a very fun course to play. It's kind of the home course. The pro out there is a great guy, and he lets me run out there and walk and play so I can get my exercise. And, I kind of just go out there. I like to keep track. Fairways hit, greens hit, how many putts I took. So I know when I practice or if I go to the range, hey, this is what I need to work on. I missed a lot of greens inside of 150 yards. So today I'm going to be hitting a bunch of 9-irons and wedges. Hey, I struggled off the tee box. I really need to get my long irons and woods in shape. But yeah, yesterday was a little disappointing because twice I was 2 under par. So I was 2 under through my first 6 holes and then wound up shooting even par on the front 9. And then the back 9, same exact thing. Got it to 2 under through 5 holes and then wind up going bogey to end it and wind up shooting 2 over on the back.
So you threw away a potential really good round.
If you eliminate bogeys, that's a 69, but you're going to make bogeys. It's part of golf.
Were they bad bogeys?
A couple of them were just missing 5 or 6 foot putts where you're like, okay, like I hit my drive right. Only had 130 yards left in or something like that, but I'm under trees and I just chip a 5-iron to right in front of the green. Then I clip a little wedge to about 4.5, 5 feet with a very subpar chip shot. But then, just missing a 4 or 5 footer, that 4-foot putt counts the same as if you hit one 350 yards.
Counts more.
So that's if you can putt, you can score. Putt and chip. If you can get up and down, you can do very well scoring.
Do you play with your dad at all when you play?
My dad's evolved to the point where he doesn't play as much anymore. But if he ever comes out with me, it's kind of like it's a very professional round of golf where he's out there and he's caddying me, reminding me of everything going on. Even dumb little stuff I'm not thinking about, whether it's talking about which way the grass grain is growing because of where the sun's setting during a putt. So he's like, hey, the grain's going this way. That's going to hold your putt more. It's not going to break as much as you think. You know what I mean?
That's
and then
funny.
Giving me a new target where I'm like, damn, I was about to play this, 5 or 6 balls outside the hole. And he's telling me because the grass is going to hold my putt, only play at 2.5. And sure enough, he winds up being right.
So that relationship is actually a good one then. I was thinking there might be a lot of every swing he's giving you swing tips type of a thing.
No, I mean, I just started doing lessons, but between him and my mom, I've built up a very good foundation for a golf swing. Mom played collegiately at FSU, went on the Symetra tour. Dad's been a PGA professional for 46 years and teaching for, I don't know, probably 40 of those years, maybe all of them. So they really know golf, and they obviously, same thing with baseball. They know what can get annoying. If he's out there hounding me on every swing, it's gonna make me angry.
Yeah.
But he's just honestly a really good caddy to have around, because he'll hit me with stuff I'm not thinking about. I'll get on a tee box surrounded by trees, and I won't feel any wind, and he'll be like, "Hey man, like the wind's blowing dead in your face. I know this is 185 yards, and you should be hitting a 7-iron, but outside of these trees, you got a 15-mile-an-hour wind. You might need to choke up and hit a 5-iron. You have a club and a half difference." And 185 for a 5-iron sounds like, wow, I got way too much club. But sure enough, you choke up and swing it up there in the air, and it comes down right at about $190. And you're like, okay. Like, I wasn't even thinking about that. I didn't feel wind. I wasn't thinking about wind. I was going to hit a 7-iron and be 20 yards short.
That's funny.
So he's a very good reminder. He's very golf conscious, very savvy. Even talking about positioning. Hey, you've been hot from 130 yards today. You've hit 2 balls from 130, and you've hit them 6 feet each time. Let's hit your tee shot to leave yourself around 130 yards. Instead of hitting driver here, why don't you go ahead and hit a 3-iron off the tee box, so you leave yourself the shot that you're hitting really good today.
That makes sense.
In order to score. Now, if you're just going out there and having fun and having a few beers with the boys, just blast driver everywhere. But if you're trying to go out there, and when I go out there with my dad, it's, hey, let's see how low we can go. Let's figure out how far down I can get it.
I got you. I haven't gotten to that point with golf yet. For me, it's the second one. It's go out there and see how far you can hit it off the tee.
Yeah, but that's how it's born. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's how you start getting this, like, oh man, like I'm starting to have a lot of fun when I play this game. Like I want to go out there, and your competitive side, your professional athlete's going to take over at a point where you're like, man, I'm hitting the ball really good. Now I wonder what's going to happen if I really start to focus on trying to score.
Yeah.
It'll take over.
I could definitely see it. Because right now for me, I'm not confident enough in the swing. Like, I know I haven't done it enough to expect to hit balls well all the time. So it's still like that in between where it just kind of go out, mess around with some stuff. But I started to play a little bit more this year and just like go to the driving range. And it was like, ooh, okay, I could see where this gets fun. Like, you watch a video and you're like, I see what's happening here.
Yeah, but I mean, even the expectation, and you're drawn. There's a lot of things very comparable. Number one, between a golf swing and a baseball swing, but even just the mentality of a professional athlete. So when I was 17 years old, I played in the GCL, which they call it the GC Hell. I mean, it's brutal, man. It's 125 degrees. You're facing young pitchers, and they throw 100 miles an hour and have no idea where it's going. Well, I came right out of high school, and I went to the GCL, and I hit, I don't know, $180. And I had just signed like 2 months before that. And I came home, and I was like, damn, dude. I was like, I don't know if I can play professionally. That was brutal. So I came home, and my first off season, I got a job at a golf course. And I don't know, I worked once or twice a week, but I played 6 days a week. And it was at that point, I was like, you know what? I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Am I going to keep playing baseball, or am I going to, focus on golf? Because I got to a +2 handicap, a legitimate +2 handicap where I'm averaging shooting 2 under par when I go out. And again, not tour caliber courses. If I played a tour caliber course, like if I went over and played the course that the Honda Classics held at from all the way back, I'd shoot 74, 75, which is still a really good round when you're talking about not being a professional. And playing from where Rory McIlroy and Tiger and Koepka and all these guys play from. But then the reality sets in, and you're like, man, if I go out there 2 days in a row and I shoot 74, 75, like I don't even make it to the weekend. Like I go home because I'm 4 over. These guys are 7, 8, 9 under. So it was at that point where golf became very competitive, and I was like, oh, like I can shoot 2 under. I can get to 5 under. I can get to 6 under sometimes. But then having a few hand injuries and then 2 off seasons that I didn't get to play at all. And then you start swinging again, and you go out there and you shoot in the high 80s or something. The first couple rounds, you're back low 90s, and you're like, what the f is going on, man? You're like, I used to shoot 2 under, and you expect to go out there and shoot even par, under par every time you're on the course, even though that's completely unreasonable. And it's to that point. It's to that point now where even I go out with my friends, and I'm like, even if I drink enough to where I'm having a really good time, and I'm gonna have to Uber home from the golf course, you're like, you know what, like I should still be able to throw up a sub 80 round. And then you go out there and drink a little bit, and you shoot an 85, and you get frustrated, and you're like, dude, what did I expect? Like,
It's funny listening to you talk about that. I think about that a lot with the baseball swing when I'm working with younger guys, is watching guys that don't have that barrel awareness, like they can't really feel where it's at. And I look back at a younger me, and even in college, I had that, like that little bit of lack of if the barrel was under my hands type of a feel. And it just takes thousands and thousands of swings to get comfortable to where you don't have to think like every swing you take is going to be, you're going to be in a good position. But
yeah.
like it's only reps that get you there. It's only time and reps that get you there.
Well, now, I mean, you even elaborate on that, getting back to baseball. Um, you elaborate on that and talk about being in a good position to hit. Now you talk about along with, you can be in a good position to hit, but if you're late, it doesn't mean jack. So now you're talking about you have to have the right timing along with being in the right position to hit in order to have a chance at being successful. Because you know you can hit a ball 110 miles an hour, but if it's an out, it's an out. You know what I mean? But if you don't ever get there on time, you're never going to hit a ball 110 miles an hour off the bat. And if it is 110 off the bat, it's in their dugout. It's in the other team's dugout. You're getting blown apart. So
that's where the mentality is really important to me, because like you said, if you're late, it doesn't matter what your swing looks like. So the way that you're on time is by knowing what you're doing, having a plan, being on the attack, like all those different things, right? Zoning up well, like all those different things play into it. And so to me, that's got to be your number one priority when you go up there, because you can have suboptimal mechanics, but get the barrel where you need to, versus having a great swing, not knowing what you're doing, being late, or just swinging at everything, whatever the case is, you know?
trust me, how many guys have you seen even throughout your career that you're like, God, that's an ugly swing, and at the end of the year, the guy's got 20 plus homers, and you're like, how? Because he's on time and he gets the barrel to a good position. It might look ugly, it might look awkward, but he gets the barrel there consistently, and he's consistently on time. And now, at least in my career at the high levels, the thing that helps the most with timing is playing every day, right? If you get 400 or 500 at bats and you see a pitcher every single day, you're going to have a good general basis of timing. But now, how do I find that mechanism in being on time when I play 2 or 3 times a week and I have to come in the 8th inning and I have to face the guy throwing 99 with sink? You know, what mentality do I have to be there at the right time?
It is really tough. I remember Conforto used to say, like in pinch hit at bats, always look to pull the ball, because you're gonna be a little bit stiff. You're gonna be a little bit like behind because you haven't been in the flow of the game. So like you have to cheat a little bit in those at bats.
And you know
that's tough.
It's so weird because even saying that, I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum, where I'll come in a game and I'll face a guy throwing 98, 99 miles an hour, and I'll see 9 breaking balls in a row. And then you're like, man, I told myself before this at bat that, this guy throws 99 miles an hour. Like, I'm just coming off the bench.
I got to go get the heater.
8th inning, I haven't moved in 7 innings. Like, this guy's going to just throw me heaters and get ahead and blow me away. And then sure, with 2 strikes, probably bury one and I swing because I haven't seen one. But what Conforto said, one of my favorite things was when you get up there and the first couple pitches, they pop you a curveball and you throw a barrel on it and get a knock, and you're like, hey, thanks. Because if you threw a fastball, that was in my dugout. I'm getting beat back here if you throw me a heater right there. So
just out of rhythm.
Appreciate the 1-for-1 day, man. Like,
that's
thank
funny.
you.
Hey, so for you mechanically over the years, what's changed from maybe when you got into pro ball to now? When you worked with DJ Peterson, you were working on getting on plane. What does that look like for you, and has that evolved since that time?
Well, the two things we really worked on were I always used to be very upright and I never gained a lot of ground, and I had a very steep swing path. You know, the old school, hey, backspin it out of
Yeah.
here. So DJ, I don't want to say swinging up, but it's much more of a, I want my barrel in the zone from behind the plate. Because again, once you get to AAA, everybody's got a cutter, everybody's got a sinker, and pitchers vary with their fastball. So at the beginning of the count, it might be 90, 91, 92, and then with two strikes, here comes 94. So it's the ability of I want to be on plane to where, hey, that guy reached back and threw at 94. Well, my barrel's on plane. Now I can hit a 94-mile-an-hour fastball and do damage to right field, as opposed to I get beat and I chop it to second base.
Mm-hmm.
And then the thing that we worked on the most that has really had me tap into kind of just a different gear of power is the lower half. How to efficiently use your lower half to create more power, along with flattening the swing out. And I got to use it in 2019. And then the second half of the season, obviously didn't get to use it as much. 2020 was excited about coming back, was feeling great with the swing, was feeling great with everything. Unfortunately, didn't get to use it. And then this year, because of having a year off, I was really just trying to search for it again. And I didn't really find it during the year. But I mean, going off of as dumb as this may sound, my joke was, I probably led the PCL in BP home runs. Nobody hit more or further home runs than I did in BP, which at the young levels of the minor leagues, I never did. I never had that, over the scoreboard pop in batting practice. Sure, I could catch a hole in one in a game and be strong and hit one there, but the consistency in BP to routinely even go over the batter's eye in spring training, I mean, that was the first time I started hitting big league balls in camp with the Red Sox here, being able to hit balls over the batter's eye in center field. I'm kind of like, wow, like where I impressed myself. So how efficient I was and how efficiently I was moving and how much power I was able to create.
So for you, that just told you that you were still doing things well mechanically.
Yeah, that told me that everything was going right where I wanted to. And I could hit an outside pitch to center field the correct way. I could take a middle in pitch and hit it to center field the correct way and put something on it. That my path was where I wanted it to be.
Can you just briefly talk about what using the lower half looks like to you, or how you think about it, how you think about that initial hip load and going forward, transferring weight, that type of thing?
So the load, at least what I think about going well, when that pitcher comes set and he shows you his cheek, when he turns to deliver, that's when you load up and you kind of show him your cheek. You know what I mean? And then the next two proponents to me are gaining ground towards the pitcher to where that front side moves towards the pitcher, and then being able to hit on a stiff front side to where you're not passing the ball, where you're hitting up against that kind of wall. But for me, the biggest thing that really played out my power was finally gaining ground with my stride. When I finally started gaining ground and moving towards the pitcher is when I really noticed the ball start to jump and take off.
What was the shift for you to be able to do that? Because I watch a lot of young hitters struggle with this, and I think one of the natural things when someone's throwing a baseball at you and you don't know what pitch is coming and all those things is if you're wavering at all in what you're trying to do, the body tenses up and you're kind of waiting to see where the pitch is. Do you feel like for you part of it was just like trusting flowing to that zone so that you could stay in constant motion versus maybe tighten up a little bit and not gain that extra 3 inches?
Well, the thing that really helps is honestly, I think a lot of it's in the approach. And Leon Durham was my hitting coach in AAA, and he worked with DJ, and he kept touching on what DJ would do with me. And he would just say it every day: look stupid out front, look stupid out front, look stupid out front. And what that does is it allows me to routinely have in my mind, like, I'm getting the fastball. I'm getting the fastball. I'm getting the fastball. And sure, when I see this pop up and I see it hanging, played enough baseball, eyes are good, you're going to sit back and you're going to hit that. Your body's automatically going to adjust. But now you bring in two different things where, hey, like I've stopped my movement to the pitcher because I've shortened up and I see this big breaking ball, and now I'm shorter sitting back and that ball's slower.
It gets on top of you.
And you just have no movement, you have no rhythm, you have no flow. You can't get to where you need to go.
I think that's
it's just being shortening up and not having a consistent stride and getting to a consistent spot obviously hurts your timing. And when your timing's messed up, your swing's not going to be, you're not going to get your A swing off.
That's why
you're not going to get your best swing.
That's why I'm not a big fan of people who communicate it as get the front foot down, because I see it more, not that it can't be correct. Like they're basically just saying be early, like be on time. But what happens a lot, I think, with guys is they stop their rhythm when they think about getting the front foot down, and then exactly what you described, you're trying to hit off your back foot. There's no flow in your body, and everything just kind of gets tight and not athletic.
Yeah. And I mean, watching the movements and how his body worked in 2018, and then even this year, DJ played independent ball this year and hit 320 with 30 homers this year in indie ball. And I mean, watching his swing, watching his timing, watching everything he does, everything looks so smooth.
Yeah.
It doesn't look like there's a lot of effort, but the movement his body creates, he launches balls. You know what I mean? And that's kind of what even the Rockies hitting philosophy was, that I loved, was effortless power. They want to create to where from the outside, if you're a fan watching, it looks effortless, but you're in such a good position and you're in such a strong position that the ball jumps. You don't ever want to look like you're swinging out of your ass. You want it to be effortless and controlled, but you still want that pop.
Yeah, dude, it's just like running. I remember watching D. Gordon in spring training. He was on first base, and I was like, all right, this is going to be interesting. Like, I want to watch him steal bases. And I was expecting it to be hyper explosive. You know what I mean? Like, just like really like sprinter bust out of the blocks type of a thing. And it was the exact opposite. It was just like the smoothest, most efficient, like looked like he wasn't even trying. Yeah. And I think when you watch good big league hitters, you're right. You see on a lot of swings that same look where it's 98 with sink, and it just looks perfectly, the hitter looks perfectly in rhythm, smooth, like it looks easy. You know what I mean?
You know, one of the guys that I think still looks super smooth was Miguel Cabrera. Miguel Cabrera, almost every swing he takes, it looks like he's hitting batting practice. Like it looks like there's nothing more than a 60% effort. And he demolishes baseballs. He's been one of the best hitters in the game for a long time. And it just looks so effortless every time I watch that guy swing. If he's hitting a backside homer off a guy throwing a 95-mile-an-hour cutter, it just looks, let me go out there and get that, and here's my barrel. And
just touch it out there.
Yeah, he doesn't have that. And that's part of the I want more mentality, too, that we fall into as athletes is, hey, man, I just hit that home run 465 feet. Well, now I want to hit it 480 feet. Now I want to hit it further. Instead of these good hitters, they know, they're like, if I get one over I only got to hit it 340 feet and it's a home run. I don't have to hit it 450 feet.
Bro, I did that against you guys, and obviously I'm not a home run guy. I think I hit 2 this year, and one of them was like second series of the season at Portland, and I hit a ball out to right. I was kind of working like barrel tip and all that stuff, and I felt in rhythm. And then the next day, I swung at a couple back foot sliders, like early in counts, and immediately my mind just went away from attacking the fastball to that indecision. You know what I mean? And It came because I was trying to do more. I was like, ooh, I'm feeling good. I can start looking to pull balls like in the air. And then I get away from my approach. I swing at a couple bad pitches, and all of a sudden mentally I'm falling out of what I was doing really well, you know?
Shoot, I remember the start of the year this year, my first 30 at bats had 3 homers, 3 doubles, whatever, was hitting 350 something. And I remember talking, and I remember like audibly saying, I'm like, dude, I feel like I can hit. I feel like I can hit anything out of the ballpark. Like I feel great. I feel locked in. I feel like I'm on time. Everything's going good. And, sure enough, coming back from that injury, I was sitting there for a while, and I was like, you know what? I was like, 2 weeks ago, I felt like a phenomenal hitter. And I was like, I sit here today on the bench, and I have no idea what I'm doing in the batter's box. I'm like, I am just absolute, like, you could underhand it to me, and I might not hit it, like, lost. But the thing as an athlete, we try to block out the bad times, Like, I honestly can't tell you times from 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, even 2018, where I was like, dude, I'm lost. Because you look at the whole season in review, you remember the positive stuff once the year's over. But when it's like that fresh in your mind, you're like, and you go through it every year, sometimes a couple times a year, where there's times where you go up to the plate and you're like, man, like, nobody can get me out. Or there was times I would go up there and I'd be, you might as well start this at bat with 2 strikes, because I only need 1 pitch to hit.
That's what
I only need 1 pitch over the plate, and something like I'm gonna do some damage. But then there's times where I'm like, dude, like, you could put it on a tee and I probably couldn't hit this shit.
It's wild how you can feel that way. I remember going that extreme in a series too, where early in that series, I like 2-0 reliever throwing 99, got the barrel out, double to right, and was like, dude, I did everything I wanted to do there. My swing feels good. I'm executing what I'm trying to do. And 3 days later, it's like, dude, you have to tell me what pitch is coming and where, just for me to be able to have a chance to hit this ball.
Yeah, just to get a good swing off.
Yeah, it's crazy. Stick to the approach.
And I mean, I even remember the game we played you guys in Portland, or not in Portland, in Binghamton. And I was like, I don't know, like 0 for 20 or something like that. And playing in cold weather, and I hit like a $180 the first month. And, we're first off, we faced Familia that series. And what gave me a little bit of hope was, I watched Devers, and Devers was one of our best hitters, and, Devers got beat. And then I came up and I smoked one off of Familia, and I was like, okay. I was like, that's one of their dudes. And it was a ground out or whatever, but I was just happy I found a barrel.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, that's one of their, like, there's a little bit of life. Like, all right. I still remember how to hit a little bit. I was like, I found one. And then I think the very next game, again, was still 0 for 20, and we faced a big lefty relief pitcher for you guys in like the 9th inning. It was 95 to 98 or something like that.
Is it Baldonado?
Yeah, that was it. And I hit a home run off the batting tunnel in right field at Binghamton. And I remember I came back that was my first AA home run, and I came back to the bench, and I was like, what happened? I was like, I literally blacked out. I don't remember any of that. I don't even know what pitch I hit. I have no idea. But at the same time, you get this little bit of confidence. You're like, all right, I had no idea what was going on that at bat. I still had a good result. And then there's a skill set of building off of, I don't want to say
that feeling,
false confidence, but like, at that point, I couldn't even see the ball, and I just happened to clip one, and I happened to run into one, and then all of a sudden, now that starts building, and then the next month I hit 300, and the month after that I hit 295, and you're able to kind of ride out that high as to where I was like, man, I was just absolutely searching for it, and now the past 2 months I went, I almost hit 300 2 months in a row.
Yeah, you get that feeling, that little surge of energy, and then it kind of builds. You have a hit the next game, couple knocks, and all of a sudden it starts to build momentum going in the other direction. So
yeah,
speaking, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, and then like that's a huge part of being a really good professional baseball player is everybody's going to go through downs. But when you're on that high, how long can you ride that high for? If you get that high, can you carry it out for 3 months? Can you carry it out, or is it going to last for a week and then you're kind of back to being so-so?
Yeah. So speaking of momentum, last question right here. Why couldn't the 2015 Greenville Drive beat the Savannah Sandnets? What was going on in that locker room with all those players where you guys could not beat us that year?
I have to say our manager wasn't too thrilled about any game that we played Savannah. But I'll tell you what, I actually got a lot of shit because I gave Guillorme one of my bats uh, towards the last couple series, and I think Guillorme probably hit 800 off of us, just routinely hitting doubles. And one of the catchers picked up my bat after Guillorme hit a double, and they were like, "Long, did you give that guy that bat?" And I was like, "Yeah, like, he's a buddy of mine. I gave it to him." And he goes, "What the fuck, man?" And I just started getting like worn out because I gave my buddy a bat and Guillorme's hitting 800. But I don't know, man. That's just one of those things where you guys were just our kryptonite, man. Like we couldn't really seem to piece anything together, and when we did, you guys always had an answer.
Dude, that was
It's just
wild.
what it seemed like. As many guys, and as many superstar talents as we had. And you talk about, you know, Mauricio Dubon being a big leaguer. You talk about Yohan Moncada. You talk about Andrew Benintendi. You talk about Rafael Devers.
Kopech.
Javier Guerra, who is now a pitcher. I don't know if you heard his story, but it's kind of funny.
He's pitching now, huh? I played against him in AAA when he was with the Padres, right?
Yeah. So he had that year with us in Greenville, and the next year he struggled, and the next year he struggled. And I saw him when I was with Cincinnati, and he goes, I didn't know he was pitching. I just saw him carrying a glove. I was kind of like, "What are you doing, man?" Because we would sit on the back of the bus on our trips in Greenville, and he would, try to teach me Spanish. And I was like, "What are you doing?" He goes, "I'm a pitcher now." And I was like, "What?" And I actually heard the story from one of my GCL hitting coach, Raul Gonzalez, because he was with the Padres. And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "One day there was a catcher down there," and he goes, "They had the TrackMans all set up, and Javi just jumped on the mound and threw one pitch." He was like, and it was 95 miles an hour. And then the coaches were like, "You just threw that 95 miles an hour." And he said, "Yeah." He said, "I barely tried to throw that. You guys want to see me hit 100? And then he reared back and he threw it as hard as he could. He hit like 101 in a bullpen, just second pitch he threw, and they were like, "All right, yeah, you're done hitting."
Damn, that's wild. I didn't know that.
Pitcher from there on out.
I didn't know that. Yeah, we always used to.
You remember at Greenville, he had an absolute cannon from shortstop.
Yeah, bro, he was a stud. No, that was the thing. We used to laugh because, like, the beginning of that year, I think we started 10-20 the first month, and we looked bad. Like, when you're losing games and it's ugly, and it's just like, we're not very good this year. And then some of our older guys that repeated started playing a little bit more. We got hot, like, kind of just got in rhythm for a month. And then I remember, I think we had a 5-game set with you guys, and we were behind like 6 games, and we swept the series. And then we played you guys again, like, late and needed to win, and swept another series. And it just became a joke. It kept happening in the second half, and we always used to talk about it. We're like, dude, these guys are legit, and they can't beat us right now. Like, they can't do it.
We physically couldn't. And I mean, well, then I don't know if you remember, but when we were in town, I think you scored from second base on me on a fly ball that I caught in right field, because we had one of those innings where it was a long inning. Somebody smokes one in the gap, and I run it down, and I catch it in the gap. And, it was a long inning. I was just kind of out of it, and I was like, all right, that's 3 outs. And, I friggin' turn around. I start jogging in, and everybody's like, "Throw the fucking ball." And I'm pretty sure it was you rounding third going home, scored on a sac fly from second base because I thought it was the third out of the inning.
It was either me or it could have been JJ. It could have been Jonathan Johnson.
You're talking about at that point, I think we were either down by a run or it was a tie game, and then we were down by a run. And I'll never forget, I came up with the bases loaded the next inning, and I swung at 3 sliders in the dirt. My manager was like, "Take a seat." And he sat me on the bench, and I got roasted after that. But, I mean, I'll tell you what, never forgot how many outs were in an inning ever again.
It's good. You learn from it. One time, move on.
I got lit up, dude. But, it was kind of like even stuff like that where I make a mistake at the wrong time, someone makes a mistake at the wrong time, or
everything that could go wrong went wrong.
Oh yeah, it looks like we got you guys on the ropes or something like that, and then friggin' Nito hits a big 3-run homer when you're like,
yeah, man, baseball, just the game being the game.
Typical baseball.
Hey man, well,
teams now, man.
I appreciate you coming on today. Always enjoyed playing against you, hanging out with you off the field, and yeah, man, I appreciate it. It was good to catch up.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. It was good to see you again, brother. And like I said, man, you ever make your way down to Florida, my door's always open, bro.
I appreciate you. You doing the camp again this year?
No, man. So I haven't been doing that baseball camp the past couple years. I can't remember if it was the year you guys were here or the year after. I wound up making it complete, just whatever the camp made. I just donated it all to Little League to kind of help them cover expenses and stuff like that. And then I turned it back over to the camp's creator that's used to be a rover for the Mets, Jack Voigt.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so Jack started the camp here, I don't know, 35, 40 years ago now at this point. It's been a long time. But I turned it back over to him. I did it a couple years as a full donation to Venice Little League. And then I was like, you know what? I was like, this is a lot of effort, a lot of planning, yada, yada. And I was like, I'm going to take my time to really focus on my career and what I need to do to, you know, continue to advance.
I got you, man.
I still go out there and help and coach, but, you know,
Just
I don't.
not running all the behind. Yeah,
I'll go out there for 2 days and help run.
I got you. Hey, man. Well, again, thank you for coming on today, and I'll talk to you soon, man. We'll catch up soon.
Thanks for having me on, brother. Take
Later.
it easy.